So, well, we know that in our bodies we have what is called hormones. And hormones are special type of signaling chemicals that they can be angels of life and they can be like angels of death for us. If hormones are out of balance, if they, let's say, the levels of certain hormones are too high or they're too low, then it is really difficult to counteract their impact upon our body, and it can be quite deleterious. So remember that hormones is the signaling chemicals, and they tell different organs of our body to do specific things. And so right now we kind of will go over in general, and then we will look with you specifically, because I need to lay down a little bit of foundation, okay? We will look with you at the estrogen. Estrogen is a very powerful hormone, and we better be friends with estrogen. We'll look with you what does it do and what we don't want it to do in our body. Okay. So when there is too much estrogen, or when there is not much of estrogen, and yet it can still behave like there is a lot of it. So that will be estrogen dominance. Then we will look with you at how estrogen plays together with other hormones. Now, when we will talk about the hormones, the very important part is to understand how those hormones work together, because they actually make impact upon each other.
J'ai eu un message comme quoi ils ont dit maintenant ils ont reconnu.
They make an impact upon each other. And we will look with you how estrogen affects two probably most important hormones in our daily life, and that's the thyroid hormone and insulin hormone, because both are affected with aging, as we're aging. All right. So next we will look with you how estrogen specifically affects osteoporosis. We will look with you at the hormonal changes and cardiovascular disease, and then we will look at menopause and how it affects cancers and the reproductive system, and then we will go through some questions and answers. Okay, so these are the hormones that we will primarily look with you today. That's estrogen, and there are three types of estrogens. The main one that is actually produced by the ovaries is estradiol. So we will look with you at estradiol. So when we will be talking about estrogen, we're going to talk about estradiol in particular. So then we'll look at progesterone, then thyroxine, that's the thyroid hormone, and insulin. And then as we go, we may mention a few others. So as we are aging, we're talking about women, the levels of estrogen will change, and they will be declining toward the 50s as the menstrual cycle becomes more irregular, and eventually that shuts down because the ovaries no longer produce sufficient amount of estrogen. It's not like they completely stopped doing that. They're still producing estrogen, and the production of progesterone is virtually stopped. There are some other parts of our body that can produce some amount of progesterone, but it's very negligible. So as the estrogen production declines, it will affect many things in our body. So let's look with you, for example, at the way that the estrogen will affect the let me see. I'll have to. For example, how estrogen is connected with, I wanted to fast forward a little bit here. My slides are not in the best order here. The insulin and thyroid. I wanted to talk with you about this. You know, as we're aging, the amount of the thyroid hormone that is produced goes down. The amount of insulin hormone also may go down, but that's usually later than the hormone. Thyroid hormone tends to be reduced sooner than even insulin hormone is production declines. And the estrogen and the thyroid hormone, they actually connected to each other in such a way that if the levels of estrogen are high, they will actually inhibit the action of the thyroid hormone. So the woman may still be actually producing normal amounts of thyroid, but the estrogen, if it is high, will be inhibiting the action of the thyroid hormone. And this is critically important for, let's say, those people who have already borderline low thyroid. For example, to be diagnosed actually with the low thyroid, the thyroid hormone, I will try to avoid a lot of technical medical words. I'll try to explain things in a simple way, so please bear with me. The low thyroid can be just a word and be very distinct with the symptoms that accompany low thyroid. But in many other cases, the body is still able to produce a good amount of thyroid, not quite enough, but still a good amount of it. But it will be impaired by high estrogen levels. Now, where does that come from? The high estrogen, it can come actually in two ways. And they're different depending on where a woman is in her cycle. If the woman is still has normal menstrual cycles, or if that's already passed. Now, if there is still a menstrual cycle normal that is going on, then there may be improper ovulation, what is called. When there is no ovulation, then there is no progesterone production either. So now we introduced in another hormone that is called progesterone. So they should be in balance, estrogen and progesterone, because progesterone regulates the amount of estrogen that is produced during the menstrual cycle. So, well, when estrogen is high, then what it does, it actually increases the amount of what's called of special protein that binds thyroid hormone. So for the thyroid hormone to be available in your body, it has to be what's called free. That means not bound to any proteins, okay? But what the estrogen does, when it's high, it increases the amount of these proteins that basically bind the thyroid hormone. So woman is still producing the thyroid hormone, but yet it's not biologically available. And it will be in the bound form. And let's say those of you, or those of you that you know that may be supplementing with thyroid hormone, so they have to supplement already. They at the same time, they may be supplementing with estrogen, because today estrogen is one of the most commonly prescribed pills in the United States. In fact, I know that there was a lady that I know, she was just in her mid-50s, like around approaching her 50s, and the pharmaceuticals already were calling her advertising the estrogen pills, telling her that she needs to start taking estrogen pills, and they would list her different reasons that we will mention about it as we go, and whether do we need it or not. So the estrogen will be opposing the action of the thyroid hormone by increasing the amount of the thyroid hormone that is biologically unavailable. And then if woman also supplements with estrogen pills, then she has to actually increase the amount of the thyroid hormone to compensate for the estrogen that she's supplementing with. Can you believe that? So it can be pretty tough. And as we can see, and that's what the impact that estrogen can make upon the thyroid. Now, if the, let's say the menopause already came and there is no menstrual cycles, then we have another danger. And that danger is that the progesterone can be too low in comparison to estrogen, because estrogen is still produced by other organs in the body. Even though ovaries are shut down, but there are other cells in our body that are capable of producing estrogen. And especially in the absence of progesterone, this is when it's like a hidden form of the estrogen dominance can develop. And what I mean by the word hidden, it's because if you will take your test, the test may show that the levels of the estrogen are actually within normal levels. But if the progesterone is too low, then the estrogen will act like it is dominating, like like the woman has an actual higher levels of the estrogen than normal. So that can also make an impact similar to as if there is just levels of the estrogen more than normal. Okay, so this is how estrogen is connected with the thyroid hormone. Let's now look with you how estrogen is related to insulin. I will read you this quote that it's a quote from the medical journal. And basically what this quote means is that estrogen increases insulin, it actually decreasing the insulin resistance, but when the estrogen is low, too low, then it actually can increase the insulin resistance. So basically in estrogen, there is a good thing about estrogen because it sharpens the action of the insulin. So one of the reasons why women may gain some extra weight or prone to gaining extra weight after menopause is because they are more prone to develop what's called type 2 diabetes. What is type 2 diabetes? Type 2 diabetes is associated with insulin resistance. Insulin resistance. Have you heard about, are you familiar with what's called insulin resistance? That means the body is producing insulin, but the cells are refusing to connect with it. They're refusing, they're shut down to the insulin. So estrogen, do we need this estrogen? Oh yes, we do need estrogen. And one of the reasons that we need estrogen even in menopause is because estrogen is sharpening the insulin. It makes our cells more sensitive toward it. So one of the scenarios that can develop if the estrogen, when the estrogen drops, when the levels of estrogen drop, well, then the body will try to compensate, and as you can see here, it will begin to overproduce insulin. Now, that's provided that my pancreas is still capable of doing that. Not everybody's pancreas will be just as brisk in the late 50s or 60s as when we were teenagers, right? And basically, this insulin resistance will eventually can lead to the development of type 2 diabetes. Now, diabetes is a separate subject. I'm not going to dive into that. I will just only cover, we will stay focused on this specific subject here. But we already learned two things, that estrogen impairs the availability of thyroid hormone if it's too high, and if it's too low, then it can lead to desensitization of our cells to the insulin. Okay, and that, of course, can cause the gaining of the weight. Now, imagine if the, let's say, the thyroid is not functioning well, then the insulin sensitivity is low, then, of course, the gaining of the weight will be the result. So, for example, gaining of the weight is not mediated often by just one hormone, but the several hormones can be involved in it. Okay, now we're going to talk with you a little more what can we do about it, okay, as we go. Let's see, let's look at other dangers, common dangers, and one of the most fearsome is osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is a serious threat to us, to those women that already approached menopause. Now let's look with you what is going on. When it comes to the bone health, there are two main types of cells that are involved. There are what's called bone building cells, and there are bone destroying cells. Okay, I will just mention their actual medical terms. That's the bone building cells that are called osteoblast, and bone destroying cells are called here the the osteoblast. There's the bone building cell, and the bone destroying cell is osteoclasts. But for the simplicity, I will just use bone destroying and bone building cells. And that's interesting how different hormones make an impact upon the bone health. So as you can see here, that what estrogen does, it actually puts like brakes on the bone destroying cells. That's why one of the reasons that the doctors, you know, they may say that, hey, you need to have estrogen supplementation because you will develop osteoporosis. This is one of the main threats that will be put before you as the motivation for you to start taking estrogen pills, because for this very reason. Because when the estrogen goes low, it like releases the brakes, and the bone destroying cells kick in and they start the destruction. And in fact, it is estimated that within 30 years, women can lose half of her bone density after menopause. So let's say if the woman went into menopause at 50, then by the age 80, she may lose up to half of her bone density. All right. Now, we talked about progesterone, and the progesterone has an opposite action than estrogen. As you can see here, it actually stimulates the bone building cells, the bone building cells. The thyroid hormone stimulates bone, actually destroying cells. That means it will, if it is very high, it will increase the turnover of the bone faster. That means if somebody has high overactive thyroid, then they will start losing their bone density because the bone destroying cells will be stimulated. Okay. And wanted to mention about one more hormone, and that's called cortisol. Do you know that I'm sure very familiar what is cortisol? Cortisol stress hormone is the main stress hormone that is produced by adrenal glands. And what it does, it actually inhibits the bone building cells. Now you have another motivation for stress management, just to stay happy and not to be stressed out, because cortisol as a stress hormone, you know that it does many bad things. You know, chronic stress does many bad things. But now you know one more very important, or maybe you already knew about it, I'm just repeating it for you. One more very important thing, it actually inhibits the bone building cells. So this is quite an orchestra here. And estrogen plays one of the important roles. Now, I already listed you quite a few problems. Let me mention about one of the solutions here. When it comes to this fear of the osteoporosis, and I fully how should I say? We don't underestimate the importance of it. Now, there are two ways that you can, at least two, well, more than two, we'll mention several ways to approach this issue. Of course, we do not begin to worry about my bone density, when I'm already 60 or 50. Ideally, we start early in life. We start taking care of our body and basically maintain the bone density health until we get into menopause, right? So then when we come into menopause already with good bone density, well, then I have a lot of, I have just a good bone density, a good reserve to go through my years without being afraid of fracture, hip fracture, for example. Well, and the lifestyle changes like, exercise. Exercise is really a must one for bone density because it will other mechanisms in the bones that will activate the bone building cells and will maintain the proper bone density. Okay, but let's say that we just didn't do all that, and now we're facing the grim reality. So what do we do? Do we go for estrogen pill or do we choose something else? Well, what I would do if I was in your shoes, I cannot tell you, okay, do this or do that, but I will tell you what I would do in this situation. I would start using phytoestrogens. I don't know, I'm sure you heard about phytoestrogen. Phyto means plant, estrogen is the estrogen. That means in the plant world, there are substances that are similar to estrogen. They act like estrogen. And there are studies that showed the benefit of these phytoestrogens for the bone health. Now, where do we get phytoestrogens? Well, one of them, I'll talk a little more about soy when we will mention about the cancers. I will mention that soy when you consume it as a whole product, in a tofu or as soy milk. These are two most common ways that we consume soy. But also there are, for example, there are herbs like red clover. Red clover is a good source of phytoestrogen as well. And again, I'm referring, there are studies that show the benefit of phytoestrogens and how it reduces the development of osteoporosis. So here already we have several things that we can do. You know, we can exercise. Now, how do we exercise? What do we do? Well, walking, you know, sometimes people have trouble walking even 5 minutes a day. Well, you can start with just 5 minutes a day, 2.5 minutes in the morning, 2.5 minutes in the afternoon. 2.5, like let's say 2.5 minutes if you go to work and 2.5 minutes going back. That's 5 minutes for 1 week. Then increase by another 5 minutes next week. And then increase another 5 minutes next week and bring it up to 50 minutes per day. So that would be really a desirable amount for us to walk, you know, about 50 minutes a day. And we can do going to work on the way back. And then we need to realize that there are certain things that that there are other products that will increase the loss of bone density. Now, you heard about this acid and base balance, in that there are certain foods like sweets are actually acidifying for the body, because glucose, when the body is metabolizing glucose, it will lead to the increase in the mild acid. It will be actually creating acidic environment in the body that our body will have to neutralize, right? So that's quite a common issue, is for those people who have a sweet tooth. And then there are also some other products that will also increase acidity. You can check the list of them. You know, what are foods that are acidic, what are not acidic, which is in itself is a good subject to talk about. How, for example, lemon can become alkaline for our body. You know, lemon is sour, but when this citric acid is converted in the liver in bicarbonates, it will actually make an alkaline effect upon the body. So that's like a paradox. When we consume citruses, they taste sour, but the citric acid is in itself is actually ends up to produce an alkaline effect upon our body. That's why you probably heard that the lemon, how good for us are the lemons, not only or citruses because they have high levels of vitamin C, but also they make an alkaline effect along with some other good things that they do. All right, so exercise, you know, some dietary changes, phytoestrogens. Just don't get those phytoestrogen in a pill form. In the health food stores, you may find the phytoestrogens in actually pill form, already concentrated. They're isolated from the rest of the plant. That's not the way to go. I would not recommend to take phytoestrogens in a supplemental form, but you're surely welcome to have them in a natural form with the, let's say, as a soy or red clover, and there are other herbs that also contain these phytoestrogens. All right. Let me just browse quickly through what else I wanted to mention here. Since we mentioned about the cancers and the phytoestrogens, that probably would be a good time to say about it. Now, unfortunately, the menopause or the age around 60 is the time when cancers of the reproductive system, specifically cancer, the breast cancer, is the risk would be the high. Now, why is that so? Well, there are several reasons why the cancer, let's say breast cancer or cancer of reproductive system, other reproductive organs, is the risk is increased around this time is because, okay, let's say it's been already by now, let's say if the woman is 60, then, and she started her menstrual cycle, let's say at around 13, then it's been already like 45, 47 years that the menstrual cycle was affecting through the estrogen her tissues. That's when let's mention another connection between estrogen and health. Any doctor, oncologist, gynecologist will tell you that over 80% of the cancers of reproductive system are fueled by estrogen. They're connected with the estrogen. Just in and of itself, estrogen would not do that. You know, God wouldn't make us in such a way that the substance that we need, the substance that we produce, would eventually be the one to kill us. And the reason why it's not like that, because many things in our body, many chemicals in our body, they work in pairs. You know, it's like muscle. You have the muscle that contracts your hand and the muscle that extends your arm, right? Contraction and extension. So you have muscle that causes contraction, and then there is an opposite muscle called antagonist that will cause extension, right? You don't have muscle that relaxes or pushes away the same muscle that as contracts. And in the same way, it works in the chemical world of our body. We have what's called these pairs of different chemicals in our body. Let's say estrogen and progesterone, calcium and magnesium, zinc and copper. And what they do, it's like gas and brakes, the two pedals. One is doing certain thing, and then the other one is opposing it. And both, they balance each other. So estrogen is dangerous if, let's say, the menstrual cycle was messed up for a good deal of the lifetime. And if the menstrual cycles were messed up, then what I mean by that, that there was production of estrogen anyway, whether there was normal cycle or not. The estrogen was still produced, but the progesterone was not always produced at all, or it could have been produced in a lower amounts than normal. So there is like this failure of the second phase of the menstrual cycle when the amount of progesterone is underproduced. So what estrogen does when it is unopposed by another hormone, in this case, as I mentioned, the progesterone, it will overstimulate the tissue. And that takes place over and over, you know, at least 12 times a year. And it may cause mutations in the tissue of reproductive organs, which of course is dangerous because cancer does not develop overnight. Cancer is the result of sequence of mutations in the key genes of our DNAs that for some cancers, it will require maybe 4 critical mutations. For other cancers, it may take 6 or more mutations before actually cancer develops. But over lifetime, these mutations are being accumulated. And as a result, the cancer settles in. So this age, 60, is or around 60 or after 60 is where we have to be really on alert, because we most likely are low in progesterone. There is still estrogen produced, and we may have accumulated mutations over the lifetime that will predispose us for the, let's say, breast cancer. Now, what I wanted to mention about now, to connect the idea about the plant estrogens and the risk of cancer, because this is kind of a hot topic. Since we're talking about with you that we do need estrogens, and now we see that the estrogens can fuel the cancers, what is the view of this situation in the light of the hormonal balance and this situation with the development, potential development of cancer? Now, is soy safe? Is phytoestrogen safe or not? And I can tell you that soy is actually not dangerous. Even people who already have developed the cancer, actually, sorry, let me get back a little bit. There are also multiple studies that show the benefit of soy as a prevention of the cancers or of the reproductive system. Especially, they showed great benefit when the soy was introduced early in life, even before the puberty, before the menstrual cycle. So it's actually a good thing to feed your daughter soy products since early in life. Somehow, the soy makes a beneficial protection, long-term protection for the tissue of reproductive organs, and make them more resistant against cancers if the soy products, phytoestrogens, were introduced early in life, even before the onset of the puberty or menarche puberty. They did studies, by the way, that's why in China and other countries that have high consumption of soy, they believe that the levels of breast cancer is virtually very negligible. And one of the reasons is because they introduce it really early in life. Now, of course, if, let's say, cancer already developed, then trying to treat it with soy may not be already effective. And that's when the controversy really develops. And probably the endocrinologist will tell you to stay away from soy. Now, the way we look at it here in UC Pines is that the soy consumption of soy during if the person already has the breast cancer, definitely not a problem in small amounts. I mean, if you have a serving or so of soy, you don't need to, further undermine the quality of life by complete withdrawal from soy products, because especially if the person is vegetarian, then the soy products really play important role. Soy milk for breakfast, or tofu, scrambled tofu. These are two meals two types of foods that we enjoy as vegetarians. So the time when soy may be an issue with, let's say, breast cancer that's already on the way is when the soy is consumed in very high amounts, in a very large amounts. We would not recommend consumption of soy in a very large amounts if the breast cancer already there. But in the small amounts, like a serving or so, that's not going to be counterproductive or worsen the situation. So, and we can still benefit from the soy products in many other ways, as we can just mention, as we have just mentioned, the benefit of phytoestrogens for the bone health, because we're not just dealing with one issue, we're dealing with multiple issues in our body, and the bone health is one of the factors where we will benefit. Now, what is another issue that we deal with as we approach the menopause? One of them is the hot flashes, very uncomfortable condition. What causes hot flashes? Now, there are certain changes that take place in the hypothalamus, because hypothalamus is the part of our brain that is responsible for the thermoregulation. It's like a thermostat. And when the woman goes into menopause or approaches menopause, the comfortable range changes. I'll explain what it is. So let's say I feel comfortable when, you have Celsius, normal body temperature is 36.6. Let's say that's ideal temperature, 36.6. And let's say I feel comfortable between 36 and maybe 37.2. Like, I'm not sweating if I'm 37.2, and I'm not really shivering if I'm 36, okay? Now, what happens is, as a woman approaches the menopause, there are certain changes take place in this, what's called comfortable zone. Like, let's say, instead of being like this, it becomes like this. Instead of being, let's say, like 1.2 degrees comfortable range, now let's say it will be like 0.8. And because this comfortable zone is reduced, if, let's say, now woman reaches her temperature, let's say 37, she will start sweating. Whereas before, she wouldn't do that. So, and one of the reasons why it happens is because there are certain changes that take place in several other hormones that we did not talk about. But there is another hormone that is called, let's say, follicle stimulating hormone. And that hormone actually goes up in menopause. And in fact, it's actually a diagnostic tool. If the levels of the follicle stimulating hormone consistently high, that means you are in menopause. Because normally the levels of the follicle stimulating hormone, they fluctuate. Okay, they fluctuate throughout the cycle. And when it's high, as well as luteinizing hormone, that's another hormone that also plays a role in the menstrual cycle, it also goes high. So at least these two hormones, they go high. It's not fully understood what exactly causes it, but what exactly causes the narrowing of this comfortable zone. But the follicle stimulating hormone could be one of the culprits, that it goes high, and in more susceptible individuals, it's manifested that way. Now, there is another reason for the hot flashes to develop, and that's, again, estrogen dominance. When there is more estrogen than is supposed to be in the body. And we know that because, let's say, personally, I dealt with many cases when I worked at Country Life. It's a health food store here that operated in the city and belongs to the Huge Pines Institute. For several years, I worked there as a counselor. So whenever we would recommend women that come with this issue let's say, herbal teas that have phytoestrogens like red clover. Then there are other teas like black cohosh that also makes this beneficial change or impact upon the hot flashes. And it does help, actually. It does relieve the issue by increasing the amount of phytoestrogens in the body. So this is one of the ways to deal with hot flashes, is to drink herbal teas. Now there is another way of dealing with it, and that is losing weight. One of the way, because the fat tissue is actually not just a storage of lipids, but it's also actually it's endocrine, or it's an endocrine tissue. It's because it has a ability to produce hormones. So the people who have more weight, they tend to have more estrogen as well, because the fat tissue will be converting some of the hormones that are produced by the adrenals, some of the hormones that are produced by adrenal glands, androgenic hormones, they call them, or male hormones. They will be converted into estrogen in the fat tissue, and that way will increase the levels of the estrogen in the body. So the loss of weight would be beneficial in that sense as well, because the fat tissue is also like serves as a thermoinsulator, so it will in itself may also add up to the thermogenesis, being more prone to feel hot. Okay, so that's few words that I wanted to mention in terms of the estrogen, and we talked about the breast cancer, but that's true for other cancers as well. The uterine cancer, cervical cancer, estrogen will fuel them as well. Let me mention one more condition that I wanted to say, and that's called endometriosis. It's very common here in the United States. And what endometriosis means is that in the uterus, we have what's called, women have endometrial lining. Is the lining that is sloughed off every cycle. And so that endometrium thickens during every cycle, and that then it sloughed off or shed off at the end of each cycle. Now, for not really, there's not uniformity what in the medical community, what actually causes endometriosis. There are different theories that are trying to explain it, but this endometrial tissue ends up being outside of the uterus. For example, it may settle on the ovaries, or it may settle on the side, on the outside of the uterus that faces the abdominal organs. And there are several theories that try to explain it. One of the theories is that that endometrial tissue spreads through the lymphatic system, or that during the heavy bleeding, some of this endometrial tissue backflows and through the fallopian tubes and ends up outside of the uterus. And then there is another theory that is saying that the estrogen, and by the way, I will mention a little later that estrogen sits at the foundation of this endometriosis, of this issue with the endometriosis. So another theory says that under the impact of estrogen, the peritoneum, it's the membrane within which the abdominal organs are contained, the peritoneal cells can transform enter what's called endometrium-like cells. Okay, so now what actually takes place in this case? Whether, and it doesn't really matter whether the peritoneal cells will change and become like endometrium, or if they came from actually uterus and ended up being on the outside, they actually don't die. So let's say if those cells, they backflowed through the fallopian tubes and they ended up on the ovary or on the uterus, they actually don't die, but they remain alive and they continue to grow outside of the uterus. And not only then, but with each cycle, as the estrogen goes up and down, they create a lot of pain. And they actually go through the process that is similar to the cells inside of the uterus. Some of them die, so they slough off, but they have no way to go. So imagine the dead endometrial cells outside of the uterus in the peritoneum. That's not where they're supposed to be. So the body will trigger, can sometimes very debilitating inflammation that will cause debilitating pain. I know women that have, let's say, out of month, only maybe 6 normal days. And 24 days they are in pain because of endometriosis. Now, of course, the endometriosis is just one of the issues that is associated with excruciating pain, but there is also PMS, that is premenstrual syndrome, that also some women have pretty hard time going through, where the symptoms are pretty bad with a lot of pain. Now, what causes this issue? Again, we had a first-hand experience with my wife, because before I actually started learning all this stuff, she ran into a serious problem where she herself had problems with the menstrual cycle. She would have this excruciating pains. And I was so naive. I thought it's normal. I thought it's normal for a woman to be in such a horrific pain every cycle. Because the person I worked had the same story with his wife. His wife would be in pain every cycle. So I thought, well, my wife is in pain every cycle, and that must be a common normal thing. And I made a big mistake by not paying attention to her pains and not studying the cause of her problem. Well, she ended up having a surgery, a major surgery. One of her ovaries was removed, and she ended up having endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome that basically almost destroyed both of her ovaries. So one ovary was removed and another ovary, praise God, was saved. The surgeon was able to scrape off those cysts on it and reshape it, reconstruct it, and she was still able to become pregnant, and we have my daughter Samantha. So that was a miracle in itself. I remember back then, and it's been already, it was in 2006, the high-risk gynecologist that she was visiting, he told her that estrogen fuels endometriosis. Estrogen fuels endometriosis. And so she was high on estrogen. She did not ovulate properly. So that means there was little to nothing in terms of progesterone production. And with her having this polycystic ovarian syndrome on the top, and by the way, the polycystic ovarian syndrome means not only that the woman develops cysts on the ovaries, but also there is 3 or less normal menstrual cycles a year. And so it was quite a grim picture that she had, but that explained why she had such a, horrific pain with endometriosis. And actually the pain from endometriosis mimics appendicitis. She had a pain in the lower right quadrant of her abdomen. In fact, we thought when she was in a severe pain that finally we took her to the emergency room, we thought that it was appendicitis, but it ended up being actually endometriosis. And the developments actually even fluids in the peritoneum. So actually the first thought of the emergency doctor, or the doctor in the emergency room, was that she had ovarian cancer. So for 2 days, until we consulted with another oncologist, gynecologist, we thought that she had cancer because she had ascites, there's the fluids in the abdominal cavity, and tumor-like structures on her ovaries. So there is this connection. There is the connection between abnormal menstrual cycles, high estrogen levels, and we already mentioned several things. We mentioned endometriosis, that one of the ways that potentially it can spread through the backflow, through the fallopian tubes and the outside. And then, so that creates an inflammation, along with many other things. I don't want to repeat myself over and over several times. Don't want to waste time for that. But you're getting the point. Now, let me also bring up another issue, and that's even more common. And that has to do with the premenstrual syndrome. And, it may not be an issue for you, if you're already in menopause, but for others, it still may be an issue. Plus, you may have your children, grandchildren, and so forth, and they are not exempt. Nobody is exempt from the chances to become a victim of these hormone-related issues. So let me mention a few words about the PMS. That's the premenstrual syndrome. We know many even young girls that suffer from just excruciating pains, and they don't have endometriosis, but they have excruciating pains during the time around when the menstruation begins. And what we found out that there is a direct connection between this pain and what is called, let me see, I had a slide somewhere that it's already in the written form. There are chemicals in our body that are produced. They're called prostaglandins. And there are what's called pro-inflammatory prostaglandins, and here they are, and anti-inflammatory prostaglandins. So this is the abbreviation. So we have the PGE2, mediates inflammation, and then we have PGE1 and PGE3, they act as anti-inflammatory factors. So what happens here is that around that time, again, because of the combination of estrogen and high levels of the consumption of high amount of special type of oils that tend to generate in our body pro-inflammatory chemicals. So, when we talk about oils, when we talk about fats, they're not all the same. There are oils that are beneficial, and there are oils that are, if they are consumed in the disproportionately high amount to the oils that create anti-inflammatory chemicals in our body, then we're in trouble. We are in trouble. So let me make a very simple example. The most probably common butter here in the United States is the peanut butter. And so here in America, people really love peanut butter. They grow up on the sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly. And unfortunately, the peanut butter oil tends to increase the amount of the pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. There's the PGE2. And we just had so many quick results that so many girls that go through here, through the school where I am in Huge Pines, they can testify to you on the Bible the amazing results that they experience by just either dramatically reducing or eliminating peanut butter, and what an impact it made on them, how much better, how much pain was eased off or went away completely. And I mean, I've seen those ladies, they were just lying flat, completely debilitated with pain. And then they had no pain whatsoever after elimination of the just peanut butter. That was amazing to me. That was amazing to me. And so they know that, and they can testify that. So the point I'm trying to make is that not only the estrogen itself that causes the pain and problems, but also I don't want to be, to tell you to tell you what you should eat or what you should not eat, but it's like a car. Whatever it does matter for a car what kind of gas I put in it, and it's the same thing with our bodies. It will make, because the body is generating things in accordance with what I'm consuming. Like the cell membranes, they actually fat. They are actually made from fat. Each cell of your body is the membrane that covers the cell is actually made from fat. And so that fat, where does it come from? It comes from the foods that I eat and from the fat that is made up by my liver. Okay, so liver can also synthesize fats. And on the top to what I'm consuming with the food. So depending on which type of fats I consume, there could be a balance that will shift either toward inflammation and will create this environment that is pro-inflammatory in my body, which will affect not only the reproductive system, but it will affect my body in general. And also, or if I'm consuming balanced diet with the good fats. Now, what is example of good fats? You know flaxseed oil, you know walnuts, you know almonds, pecans. These are the type of chia seeds. These are the type of foods that have oils in them with anti-inflammatory properties. And in fact, the ratio of the oils that you consume in terms of inflammation and anti-inflammation should be 3:1. That means you should not consume more than 3 parts of the oils of the, let me put it this way. I would have to dig a little deeper to explain you this issue with inflammation, because there is omega-6 and omega-3 ratio. To omega-3. And when we talk about omega-6, there is a specific acid that is called linoleic acid. I'll just abbreviate it, LA. which is actually pro-inflammatory. Linoleic acid. I'll probably should just write it. Linoleic acid. Now, when we talk about omega-3, we're talking about alpha-linolenic acid. Which is found in, as I just mentioned, flax seeds, chia, walnuts. They have a very beneficial ratio. They have very high levels of omega-3, which is anti-inflammatory. So omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. Omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. So the ratio should not exceed 3:1. Guess what is the ratio of this omega-6 to omega-3 in America? It's 10:1. 10:1. So what does it do to the body? Of course, it's going to create a lot of inflammation. And a lot of inflammation means a lot of these particular pro-inflammatory, very powerful prostaglandins. These are hormone-like substances. They're short-lived, but they are extremely powerful, and they will generate very powerful inflammatory response in the body. So when we consume proper amount of omega-3 from the products that I mentioned to you, it will oppose the pro-inflammatory effect of this PGE2, prostaglandin, and will reduce the amount of inflammation and pain. And we have seen this over and over again. So reduction in these oils that generate inflammation, increase in consumption of the healthy, of the anti-inflammatory oils will bring up the desirable effect, will bring the desirable effect. I still remember when my wife, she was in horrific pain, and when they did the surgery to her, so they removed, as I said, the one ovary, so another ovary was still around, and it was still pumping a lot of estrogen. Obviously, she was not ovulating properly, was not producing enough progesterone, and she already, so she was still in pain. And I was wondering, I mean, why she already had her surgery, why she's still in pain? And the words of her surgeon, the gynecologist, oncologist that did the surgery to her, who came after the surgery. And so I asked a question, about, what's going to be I don't exactly remember how I worded it, but I asked him, like, what is going to be the result, what it is going to make an impact on endometriosis. And you know what he said to me? He said, the surgery does not treat anything. And I was shocked because as I continued my own study, I saw that the women with endometriosis, some women had like a surgery every year because the doctor, scrapes off endometrium as it builds up around the uterus and ovaries. And then the next year, the same thing. And the next year, the same thing. And I was like, is that what we're going to go through? And so as I continued my research, I saw this connection between the low levels of progesterone and the pro-inflammatory oils that we need to address. And I still remember there was that one day, my wife was still in pain, even after surgery. And I was like, and she talked to her mother, she's like, like what the daughters do, it doesn't matter what their age is. They talk to their mothers about pain, and mother can't say anything, and I'm thinking to myself, well, we need to do something. And I already had the progesterone. I got the bioidentical progesterone supplement from online. It's the progesterone that is completely identical to the human progesterone. And it's made from actually soy. They make it from soy now. In fact, they can make any this sex hormones from soy now. And but I'm not sure if I should use it or not, because I did not fully understand yet. I was afraid because I thought, well, progesterone may cause cancers. And I remember, because she was in such pain, I thought, well, let's try this. And so I got about maybe 15 milligrams in the oil. It's just oil, coconut oil with, because coconut oil is a lipophilic carrier, because these steroid hormones, they are fats. Essentially, these are fats. Progesterone and estrogen, essentially, that's fat. So, and I just applied to her, the upper chest, some of the oil, and the pain went away within like less than a minute. And I was shocked. Wow, that's fast. And then she still had maybe like 10% of the pain left during her cycles. And we already did a lot of changes, like in her diet and so forth. But one thing we did not do, we did not start on the flaxseed oil. And the flaxseed oil, as I mentioned, has very powerful anti-inflammatory properties. And when she started taking flaxseed oil in combination with progesterone application, her pain went down to 0. So what I'm showing to you here, this picture, that from the, if we'll look at the pain from 0 to 10, 10 is the emergency room level. She was at the level 10, and we went down to 0 with her without taking any drugs. I think that's amazing. I think that's amazing. And it's been already 14, 15 years, and she's pain-free, and she's endometriosis-free, and she's polycystic ovarian syndrome-free. So this is a good testimony that I don't think somebody can have much worse combination than she has had, the endometriosis with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and they kind of, they can affect each other and worsen each other. So this is the word of encouragement to you, that we are not left alone, that we are not left without ways and remedies, natural remedies, to deal with our issues. And one more thing I wanted to mention, not directly related to the hormones, but that has to do with the circulation. The circulation is a foundation of health, because our health depends primarily on two factors: is the proper circulation and we may have a good proper consumption of proper nutrients, but if we don't have the right kind of circulation, then in the long term our body will be negatively affected. And the opposite is also true. Now, what do I mean by the proper circulation? The proper circulation means that we avoid congestion of blood. How does the congestion of blood takes place? Now, let's say if my extremities are cold, let's say if my legs, my arms, my upper limbs, my lower limbs, if they are cold, then there is a reflex. It's the autonomic nervous system reflex, sympathetic reflex, that will shut down the capillaries from the skin and will divert the blood to the internal organs. Why does the body do that? Well, it does it to protect my internal organs, the temperature inside of my body, because the organs, my internal organs, they operate at much higher temperature than the temperature of my skin, the cells that require the temperature in my skin. So that chronic congestion of the blood inside of my internal organs in the long run can also have a negative impact. That's why we have to have the proper clothing and exercise, which will make sure that the blood is flowing through the limbs without being congested either in my upper body, like in my lungs, or in my abdominal organs, or in my pelvic organs. So there is a correlation between the congestion of blood in the pelvic organs and the pain levels, let's say during the PMS, and the potential for development of the disorders of the reproductive organ in the pelvic area. And here, by the way, I can give you another recommendation for those who suffer from the pain, let's say during the PMS or from other causes that are associated with the pelvic region. Heat application. That means we can apply either fomentations on the pelvis, or use what's called sitz baths, where we can actually submerge ourselves or apply just the hot water from the like a douche, like a shower. Sorry, from like the shower. We can apply in our pelvic area to warm it up, and what it's going to do is going to cause the dilation of the blood vessels in the skin, along with the dilation of the blood vessels in the surrounding areas, and will divert the blood from that part of the body, because the congestion of the blood will increase the pain, and the diversion of the blood from the area where there is a congestion will actually, specifically from the internal part where there is an issue, will relieve the pain as well. So remember also this fact, or this important condition that we need for our health is the proper circulation, along with the proper nutrients. Now, let me just mention one more thing that I think really important to talk about, and its connection between the autoimmune conditions and the estrogen. This is probably going to be the last thing that we will talk with you, but it's nevertheless very important. Now, let me give you, by the way, how much more time do I have? We're talking already an hour and a half. How much more time do I have? Do I have another like 15 minutes? And then we'll go into questions and answers?
Yes, that's absolutely fine, brother. No problem. Go ahead.
All right. So let me now stress one very important fact to you. And I will start with reading this excerpt from medical journal. All right, this is the medical journal. Increased autoimmune conditions such as rheumatoid arthritis or systemic lupus erythematosus are believed to be related to estrogen enhancement of humoral immunity. Now, we're not going to go into the explanation of what the humoral immunity is, but I'll just mention that the humoral immunity is the one that is mediated through antibodies. And the antibodies are the ones that target the unwanted objects that either already present in our body or get into our body. And once those antibodies attached to them, they label them for destruction. So now imagine if these antibodies, for whatever reason, will attach to my own cells, to the cells that belong to my body. That means they will become right away a target for my other cells of the immune system to destroy them. And it doesn't matter where these antibodies will lodge. They may lodge in my kidneys, they may lodge in my heart, they may lodge anywhere, but the result will be the same. Those cells will be doomed for destruction. And this is the case with the systemic lupus erythematosus. The word systemic means that it will spread throughout the whole body. Now, let me also mention to you that there are at least 2 other diseases where women are the primary sufferers. And one of them is the Graves' disease. I will write it here. Let me actually make a new slide. So Graves' disease. Graves' disease is a type of disease that is autoimmune disorder that affects your thyroid, where the very high levels of the thyroid begin to be produced. So, and another one is multiple sclerosis, okay, or MS, multiple sclerosis. And can you imagine, you probably know that the ratio between men and women that are affected by Graves' disease and multiple sclerosis in both cases is 10-to-1. So that means there is 10 women that are affected with this condition and only 1 man. That's quite a dramatic difference. And so I have a question to you. What would make such a dramatic difference? And there are studies that show that the difference lies in the foundational difference between women and men. Because women, they have much more estrogen than men. And they have to deal with the estrogen. And we have been talking with you already a lot about it, what it can do if it is not properly opposed by the progesterone. So there is a direct connection between unopposed estrogen, very high levels of estrogen, and autoimmune disorders. So this is another motivation for us to ensure that we have under proper control this hormone. And please do not neglect, do not ignore the symptoms associated with abnormal levels of estrogen. Do not ignore pain. Do not ignore abnormal bleeding. And take care of that. Take care of that. We already mentioned few things that can be done about it. And you can, of course, do your own research and study more about it. Okay, so we covered quite a few issues. I'm open for a few questions. I'll try to answer. If I cannot answer the question, I'll have to take it as a homework. All right, can you hear me? If you don't have questions, we can just pray and close.
I have a question, Brother Andrey.
Okay.
Or Dr. Andrey. So my name is Alice. It's actually not my question, but I have a friend of mine, and she has this question. It's on the mutations, and she would like to know whether the use of IUD, and this is the IUD with the least amount of hormone. So if the use of that IUD, if it can lead to mutations in any way.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, there are 2 things that you mentioned about the hormones. The contraceptives, there are 2 ways. There are IUDs, which is the devices that are inserted, and there are contraceptives, which are taken in a pill forms. Because you mentioned about the hormones, that's actually has nothing to do with the intrauterine device, which is just a device that is implanted, whereas the contraceptives, they're taken externally. So if I understood you correctly, she's not taking the contraceptive pill, but she's using the intrauterine device. Now,
Yes, the IUD with the least amount of hormones. That's what she mentioned.
all right. Okay. Well, so then if you say with the least amount of hormones, does she still take some hormones? Because there are some IUDs that actually I just need a little more information, because they can actually insert the slow releasing hormone that will act as a contraceptive inside of the uterus. So you don't have to take, let's say, the hormone externally. It can be actually inserted into the uterus, and it will begin making this continual slow release and work as a contraceptive as well. So I guess that's what she's taking. So she's not using IUD as a physical barrier, but she's taking it as a slow releasing hormone. Okay. Now, it actually doesn't matter in which way the hormone gets into the body that works as a contraceptive. The hormones are the same. They are giving them either high levels of estrogens that will suppress the menstrual cycle. In some cases, they give them estrogen with progesterone for the slow release, as the or as a pill, can be taken orally. But personally, I would not want these hormones. They're called exogenous. Exogenous means they come from outside to be delivered into my body. Now, one of the reasons why these hormones are quite powerful is because they are not actually 100% identical to your biologically normally produced hormones. Those are synthetic versions of the estrogens, which are actually more powerful. And the reason why they're more powerful is because they tend to stay longer in the body, because the body cannot just quickly remove them, because they are a little different from the normal hormones. And so to metabolize them, it takes longer for the body to do that. And yet they do suppress the menstrual cycle. Let's say high levels of the estrogen, what they do, they will suppress follicle stimulating hormone, and they will suppress the development of the egg in the ovaries. So that's how they work. But the high levels of it will still require a certain level of the estrogen to suppress menstrual cycle. And we just talked about, especially in the long run, estrogen is dangerous. It's actually dangerous. So, like personally, I wouldn't do that. I would not bring any exogenous synthetic hormones into my body, because it will well, for the one cause, it messes up your cycle. It messes up your cycle. And messing up with the cycle will deprives her from the protection from progesterone. And you have to have both hormones to protect from the deleterious impact of estrogen. Now, I mean, if the worst comes worse, and she still wants to stay on the that type of IUD, what I would do is I would definitely incorporate some progesterone. Then I would say that, I would supplement. I would ask for a version that has biologically identical progesterone in it, and or I would use, let's say, progesterone cream, the cream that contains some progesterone that is biologically identical to my body, and apply it to my skin. Now, this is kind of a little more complicated because there is certain dosage that is involved here, depending on the cycle. How do you apply? How much of this progesterone do you apply? It's a different question. But the bottom line is that suppression of the cycle by this IUD with high levels of estrogen, you know, you have to explain here that based already on what we have talked about, the things just don't disappear from our body, and what we take make an impact, and they will, yes, it will suppress the cycle. She will not ovulate, she won't get pregnant, but what she's going to do with all that estrogen in her body? So ask her this question, and just tell her what you have already, you know, heard here, and maybe you already learned before, that when estrogen is unopposed, it is cancerogenic. It is cancerogenic. Okay, so she will have to trade her safety for risk of becoming pregnant. You see? So I guess there should be a better solution there. There should be a better solution. You know. Any other questions? You're welcome.
Sister Ledla, you raised your hand. Sorry.
Okay, I have a question. I don't know how to raise this hand. Are you seeing my hand in any case?
Go ahead, Sister Mary. Sister Ledla, you can go after Sister Mary. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Pershin, thank you very much for giving to someone like myself this introductory lecture on the hormonal activity in our bodies, and as we age, and how the changes can take place in our bodies. It's going to help me in my reading and my own personal research to be able to begin to understand things, because you have presented the background that will help me to begin to identify and understand things. I see how complex the woman's body is, and also the fact that there is also uniqueness in everybody. So God created us like that. My question has to do with this topical issue of the spike protein that they're injecting into people's bodies. I'm very, very surprised. If my surprise is based on ignorance, please, you would enlighten me, that they are planning to inject stuff in people's bodies, but I've not heard any scientists talk about the differences in people's bodies, especially the difference between a woman's body and a man's body, and the impact that it might have. And yet, from all that I've heard so far and read so far, I've not read too much, but the bit that I've read tells me that it's going to alter the body's own functioning in terms of its personal immunity. And please, can you just highlight and help us understand some of these things, even if it boils down to a personal decision? One final thing, thank you very much. Your name is called, your first name is spelled, there's no accent in it. I come from a French-speaking country too. Is it Andrey? Is it just Andrey? Does it have a Y
it's
in
actually Andrey.
Okay, thank you very much.
Andrey.
Thank you very much. So my question is over.
Okay, I'll just.
I'm sure you make sense of it, since I don't have a medical background.
Okay, Andrey, here I put my right name. So let me reiterate, Sister Mary, the question is, you're talking about the impact upon the immune system from the hormones that are given either they can be either injected like estrogen or taken in the pill form upon the immunity. Are you referring to the these sex hormones, the estrogen?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm referring to the vaccine that been given to everybody on Earth.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you are asking the question about the vaccine against the COVID, obviously, that
Yes.
is right now is okay. This question is definitely it's not directly related to our mainstream subject because we are addressing the hormonal issues with the but we will kind of somewhat wander away, but it's a critical question, so let me try to answer this issue with vaccination. Okay, so what this vaccine is? This is a new type of vaccine. They are called these are the RNA or the vaccines that the way they work is they contain a genetic material that once it is introduced, once it arrives inside of the cell, in the cytoplasm of the cell, it doesn't actually go inside of the DNA, inside of your nucleus, inside of the nucleus of your cell. But it remains to be in the cytoplasm, means outside of the nucleus, but it has already the RNA, it's a ribonucleic acid, which has a code for the protein to be produced that is will be similar to the response as if you have been for your body to synthesize the proteins that will be to synthesize the proteins that once they reach the surface of the cell, then your immune system will detect their presence and will begin producing the antibodies toward them. So basically, what this vaccine does is that it mimics the actual infection with the virus. So instead of actually getting a virus in my cell and then my body reacting with response by antibody production toward the actual cell that is infected with the virus, because infection with that virus will lead to the production of certain proteins on the surface of the cell. So in this case, what they do, they inject this genetic material that has code for the same proteins that will, as they will appear on the surface of the cell, they will cause for the same response from the immune system, like I was actually infected. So I just wanted to lay the background of what this vaccine do. So it does not actually go into my nucleus of my cell and change my genetics, but it works in the cytoplasm and causes the production of the proteins that are just like those ones that would be caused if I was infected by the virus. So now, after all this was said, the question is what and how is going to affect my immunity. Now, we can see that the medical community itself, the doctors, they do not guarantee 100% that even if I was vaccinated, that number one, it makes me safe for other people. So I still have to wear a mask. That's why I still have to wear a mask, because I can still be a carrier. And that I won't need like another booster. Now they're talking already the third vaccine. possibly that the third vaccination after the two, primarily they take one, then 3 weeks later, second shot. Now they're talking about the third shot that probably will be needed. And the reason why is because the vaccines, they do not work in the same way as, let's say, when the person goes through the normal course of the disease. The vaccines, for the most part, they primarily emphasize what's called humoral immunity. We just mentioned about the humoral immunity. The humoral immunity means it's the arm of the immunity of your immune system that is mediated through antibodies. You see, we have two types of immunity. We have cellular immunity and the humoral immunity. We have the immunity that is, let's say, if I went through the normal course of the disease, then both my cellular immunity and the humoral immunity are activated. And that's why if somebody had measles, for example, they will have no problems with being exposed to the measles for the rest of their life because they are fully immune to it. That means their cellular arm and the humoral arm are sensitized to it. If somebody is relying on the, let's say, measles vaccine, that they have to get child boosters of the vaccine because the vaccine works only for a certain time and then they have to enhance it. So that's the basic foundational difference between the vaccines and just a normal course of the disease. Now, when we talk about this COVID vaccine, I don't want right now to tell you, to take a position of your conscience. You have to make your own decision in this regard. And I want to be careful. I can speak for myself only, right, in this situation. I'll be speaking for myself, and I'll be telling you how I view it. Now, I don't feel that I need this vaccine. I believe that my immune system can take care of it. Because what I'm relying on the healthy lifestyle. For already 20 years, I'm vegetarian, and I'm practicing the health laws that involve the temperance, involve the proper diet, proper lifestyle. So that's what I'm relying on. I'm relying on my immune system to take care of, rather than using vaccine to take care of my potential exposure to the different issues. Now, do vaccine carry a risk? Yes, they do. And nobody denies that. The doctors, they will tell you that, yes, there is a chance that, and we know there are quite a few people died from vaccine because they had this overwhelming inflammatory response to it. So the vaccine can trigger this systemic inflammation that will actually kill person. And that's how people die from it. So, so that's the question. Are the vaccines 100% safe? No, they're not. And nobody claims that. CDC is the Center for Disease Control doesn't claim that. They warn you that the vaccine, it can kill you. And nobody doubts it. But yet they just let you make a choice. To take a chance, and take the vaccine, or, you can choose not to take vaccine and face actual virus. And then now you have to calculate what the odds, because, depending on the age, depending on your health condition, the outcome can be different if you face the actual virus. So you have to make your own choice, based on sound decision, because the vaccine itself is not a guarantee that it will protect me from the virus. It's not a guarantee for that. Also, there are chances, as I said, that it may cause some health issues, and that's not denied. So I will just confirm, I don't want to be your conscience. You know, you have to make your own decision based on the information that I'm presenting, based on information that you have been studying. And just like everything else I have said today, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm telling you what I would do in your case, okay? So I'm telling what I would do in your case based, and also I brought you the researches, medical journals, the quotations from medical journals that will help and guide you into making the decision. Thank you for the questions. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome.
We just have two questions left in the meantime, Brother Andrey. First is Sister Lidla, and then Sister Angelica can go next.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. One, how long does the hot flash problem last? Two, is there anything else someone can take for hot flashes apart from soya-based thing? Because I was given soya-based tablets and they made my hot flashes really, really, really bad. I had to stop taking it. Thank you.
What was the first question? I'm sorry, the first question. What was the first question?
How long do hot flashes last? Because
Okay.
I have been going through the process of menopause for the past 5 years plus. And it's actually getting worse instead of getting better.
Okay, I see. It varies from individual how long these adjustments will take place as the body goes through the menopause. You know, it may take 5 years, may take longer. That's depends on individual biology of the person. Depends on the levels of the hormone production, because as we said that the estrogen is still produced by other organs in the body, and there is just not enough of it produced by the ovaries to actually lead to the menstrual cycle. But ovaries themselves, they still produce certain amount. Now, since your case is tough, your case is tougher than other cases, then, and as you mentioned that the soy did not actually work for you, that means that there is something else that is involved there. Now, I mentioned that it seems to me that people who, one of the ways to take the situation under control is weight management, is the weight control. That means because the fat cells are the ones that will also play into this game of the dealing with the hot flashes. Now, this the exercise, I found that the exercise will help to actually eliminate, to stabilize the or to alleviate the hot flashes. It's one way is the exercises.
I'm actually very sportive.
You are sporty?
I'm very sporty.
Okay, so you are sporty. Okay, hold on. Can I ask for a second? Let me. I'll be right back in just one second. Give me just 1 second. I have to
Okay, while we're waiting for Brother Andrey to get back, Sister Ledla, are you there? Hello?
I am here.
I was just about thinking the same thing when you asked that question, and he mentioned about overweight and exercise, and I said, okay, well, she's not overweight, and she and
I
she
exercise.
works
I am
out
skinny.
all the time. So what can it be?
I'm a vegetarian too.
Exactly. So you're a special case, actually. So yeah, let's see.
Let's wait and see.
How many questions do you think we can ask more?
Look, I'm not sure. I know that there was a time period of 2 hours maximum, and we already passed the 2 hours.
Oh,
So let's see how we go. Maybe I'll ask the question to Brother Andrey to see, how much time does he have left, and if it is a limited time, then we'll just have to cut it short, and then maybe we can schedule another session another time.
okay.
But let's see what his availability is, because there was a bit of a misunderstanding about the time difference. So I'm not sure, he might just be having a back-to-back meeting as well.
Okay. Following you while we are walking, eh?
Oh, that's lovely. Look at you. That's dedication. That is
Wow.
dedication.
Jealous of you, Eileen. You're having
okay,
a
I'm
good
back.
time.
Sorry, I had to quickly take care of something here. All right.
No problem, brother. Go ahead.
Here, what I would recommend in the very stubborn case, and I found that it did work. I had several cases like this. And that's, I would actually recommend to apply topically natural bioidentical progesterone. Now here in US, we have, it's pretty easy to get. And what it is, it's again, I'm underlining and emphasizing this fact that this is the biologically identical progesterone, because there is a confusion even among the medical community that they use the word progestins, and the progestins, they combine everything, progesterone and the synthetic progesterone. So what it is the progesterone that it's made from the plants, from the soil, and it's exactly the same as the progesterone produced by your own body. Now, this is what happens. Normally, during the normal reproductive period of the lifetime of the woman, the ovaries, they produce up to 20-25 milligrams of the progesterone per day during the second half of the cycle. So when the woman goes into menopause, the requirement for the progesterone goes much lower because there is not that much estrogen is produced, but still the woman is producing a certain amount of progesterone by other organs. For example, the sheath cells from the neurons, they're able to produce. Then stromal cells on the ovaries, they still produce some progesterone. But in some cases, it may not be enough. And and in this case, what I would do, and I saw good results, is I would supplement with about, and actually here where the things are vary, some women, for the most part, actually, they need maybe like 5 milligrams of topical progesterone. So that means you apply it on your skin, okay? You do not drink it, you do not take it inside, you apply it on the skin. And you can apply it pretty much anywhere in your body. For the fast absorption, you have to apply it on the thin-skinned areas like chest, and also where there is a lot of blood vessels. There's the chest, upper back, face, that's where we have a lot of blood vessels. And so you can apply 5 milligrams of progesterone for 2 to 3 weeks, and then you have 1 week break. And then again, you can do that, just 5 milligrams per day for 3 weeks. So what are you doing in this way? You are mimicking the menstrual cycle. So let's say you're using it, normally you would be producing it for 2 weeks, and then you have 2 weeks where your progesterone levels are low. It's during the menstrual cycle. So in this case, if you will start using some of this progesterone for 2 or 3 weeks, you can start with just 5 milligrams. That's a really low amount. That's about the amount that woman produces during the her menopause. So they produce somewhere between 2 to 5 milligrams per day. You're still producing certain amount. And that can make a difference. So you can find probably it in the form of creams, though creams are not the best, because creams, they contain many other ingredients in them. But, you know, ideally, if you can find the source of natural bioidentical progesterone that has only progesterone and what's called lipophilic carrier. And lipophilic carrier is just an oil. Usually it's a coconut, or can be other oils as well. So here we have, it's in coconut oil. We actually sell it in Country Life. And wow, it helped already so many women. So, and because what it's going to do, it's I'm not exactly sure at the way that it works, but I think one of the reasons the way that the progesterone works, it helps tissues to be better sensitized to the already existing estrogen, because in the absence of progesterone, the tissues, they respond less to the estrogen than in the presence. So they like sharpen each other. So you need less of estrogen, but in the presence of progesterone, it will the body will respond properly to it. And in the same way, and so that's how it will make the beneficial effect. So you understand, remember we mentioned that the body has these chemicals that work in pairs, and estrogen and progesterone, they need each other, because otherwise the body will become kind of dull and desensitized to the estrogen if there is no progesterone, and it can go really high. So this is what I would do in your shoes. I would supplement with just a little bit of progesterone. You can even start with just 2 milligrams. I know there's one lady, all she needs like 5 milligrams for a couple of weeks, and even that, not every cycle, and she feels good. And the many others also, I know that they benefited. If nothing else works, you know, as you said, you know, you're practicing everything and still things are not going right, then I would try supplementation with this product. Okay, any other questions?
Yes, first, Brother Andrey, there's probably going to be more questions, but we just want to know, what is your time limit? How much more time do you have so we can manage your time effectively?
Yeah, probably I could take one more question, and then we can just, you know, schedule another meeting, because we're trying to cover so many things with you, and we are going already beyond. And but I'm so happy, and I'm really happy to be with you, and I'm really happy for the interest and for the questions you ask, and I'm very happy to answer all of them. But let me take one more question, and then maybe we can work on just, you know, not trying to compact everything in one session, but maybe we can just
absolutely
have
agree.
more meetings with you.
Perfect. Angelica, you asked your question, and then ladies, we'll try to schedule another time with Brother Andrey. So Angelica, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. My question doesn't really have something to do with the female hormone thing, but it is something that you mentioned, how soy is good for you and that it should be given at a early age. but I'm a mother of 4 boys, and I've heard that it's not so good. So we are drinking soy and eating soy products here. So is it something that is good for female but not for male, or how does that work?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'm familiar with these fears. I did the research actually on it, and there is this myth where some parents, they're afraid to give soy to their boys because they're afraid it will make them more feminine. The research shows, actually, if you will look, you can just Google, you can look at the medical journals and studies. I have not found even one yet that would say that the boys will be affected negatively with soy products, like that they would have impaired development of their reproductive organ, or that they will become more feminine. There is no such a research as indicate that soy products would interfere with the normal maturation of the male child. So as far as today, it is actually, from the viewpoint of the medical studies, it's safe. It's safe, and it is very beneficial for girls, and it's not dangerous at all for boys. So I would say that if I had a boy, I would have no problem giving him soy products, because scientifically it's not, it is a proven fact as far as up to date that there's nothing wrong that will go with the development of the growth of the male child. Okay. Thank you for the questions. I'm really happy to see you, and I think we had good time.
Yes, we did. We did. Thank you, Brother Andrey, very much for this informative session. I'll touch base with you again to try to schedule another consultation with you. Let's close with the prayer. Would you mind offering a word of prayer for us, brother?
I will be privileged to do it. Thank you, Father. We're just so amazed at your love unto us. We're so grateful unto you for all the mercies that you pour upon us, and that at this time we can communicate across the ocean, across the continent. We can communicate, and we can share, and we can encourage each other, and we can find out for ourselves better what is right, what is truth, and stick with it, that you will dissipate the unnecessary fears, that you will expose the myths and the prejudices, and all that will be exposed in the light of the truth and knowledge, the scientific knowledge, the true sound scientific knowledge, and knowledge that is based on the Bible, on the spirit of prophecy, and the true science. Because there are many researchers that are guided by you, that help us to understand what is going on in our body, and how can we remain healthy, how can we age gracefully, how can we face the old age in the best health possible, and how we can share this knowledge and information with others and save them from great deal of suffering. So please bless my dear sisters and their families, and thank you again that we could meet together in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much. The Lord bless you and your family.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, I will then continue already talking with your moderator and with Sister Trevena, and we'll go from there. Well, have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
Yes,
much.
Thank you. God bless you.
Bye.
Bye.
everyone.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.